The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Today is the fourth day of this 8-day sesshin, the Rohatsu sesshin, the most important sesshin in the year for Buddhists. And that is the one that memorializes and replicates, hopefully, the Buddha's own awakening experience. That was the first sesshin ever, as far as we know at least, is when the Buddha, having tried all kinds of alternative ways of finding out why there is suffering in the world, and coming near death from doing the ascetic practices that were typical in India in those days, finally decided to try a different route, and that was inward instead of outward. And so he did so. He sat down beneath what is now known as the tree of enlightenment, the Bodhi tree, at Bodh Gaya, and there it still lives. Well, its progeny lives. I think it's the third generation tree, but it is in the same place, and you can also sit underneath it. It's in a very small plot of ground next to the temple edifice. But when Zui-san and I were in Bodh Gaya in 1996 in February, we did that. We also got amoebic hepatitis, which was not so much fun, but it was deeply inspiring to be able to sit under on the same plot of land under a sibling tree that the Buddha himself had sat under when he came to his great awakening experience. And what did he realize? What did he realize? We know about the Four Noble Truths, that life is characterized, this life is characterized by, it's called dukkha, but it's been mistranslated or not 100% accurately translated as suffering. It has also been translated as pervasive dissatisfaction. And that is perhaps another version of it. Ranges all the way from mild boredom to extreme anguish. And this is what we human beings can experience depending on what we go through in our life. And he said, however, that there's a way that we don't have to be plagued by dukkha. And how? Because dukkha is caused by trying to hang on to things, hang on to ideas, hang on to people, hang on to things, hang on to situations, hang on to especially an idea of who we think we are. But the reality is that ideas are like the foam on top of the ocean, whereas the deep, deep, profound depths of sea are the deeper reality. And so we can either live in the foam and be filled with some level of dukkha at various different times, or we can go deep within ourselves and open to who and what we really are. The most effective way to do this, of course, is if we come to practice out of an innate need to be free, or need to return, or need to comprehend what it is that is us. Many, many years ago in California, I had a student who remembered as a small child, so small that he was still sleeping in his crib, looking up at his little legs up in the air, wondering whose legs they were. How did he get into that body? Who was he really? And he kept asking that question, pondering that question over the years. And when he was about 4 or 5, he actually had what I'm convinced was a significant breakthrough, a Kensho experience, which was advantageous to him because he grew up with a set of abusive parents. And that was what kept him sane, really. Both his parents were sent off to federal prison for transporting drugs across the border from Mexico. And both of them abused him both verbally and physically. Although just shortly before he died of heart failure, actually I think he had a heart attack, almost 50 years old, he was a heavy smoker, and he was also grossly overweight. But shortly before he died, in the last months before he died, he and his father went to visit his father's brother. And his father's brother said something about how it was difficult for Fugan to grow up with his father and his mother. And Fugan agreed that it was very painful, at which point his father apologized and was in tears about it. It's a little bit late, but better late than never. And I'm very, very grateful that he was able to hear those words of apology, because he despite the treatment, he dearly loved his parents. So let's share something from various different sources. The first is Li Po, who was a poet, a Chinese poet. And this is what he said. The birds have vanished into the sky, and now the last cloud drains away. We sit together, the mountain and me, until only the mountain remains. We sit together, the mountain and me, until only the mountain remains. We sit together in the Zendo and me, until only the me that is beyond remains. We work to focus to the deepest degree possible, and this takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of time, and all along the way, we're finding out how challenging it is. And yet each time we meet that challenge and bring that mind back to the focus of the practice, we are eroding the distractions, we're eroding the dysfunction, we're eroding the dukkha, basically. We all have this idea that coming into practice, we do a few breaths and then, oh boy, it's going to be just lovely. That's not at all the case. Often we do a few breaths, and initially it can be quite simple and easy, and then it gets more and more difficult. But as we rise to the challenge and keep bringing the mind back, keep bringing the mind back, keep bringing the mind back, keep extending the breaths, and sitting in our body, experiencing the physical experience, the sensations of breathing out, it makes a difference. And we will find, even after a few days of sesshin, that we are a bit lighter in our way of being. And then, and this is a warning, because as soon as we reach a point of letting go, even a little bit, and we experience that the depth of peace and ease that comes from that, then there is, a few days later, an ego backlash. It's as if the part of us that is deeply invested in the status quo, into maintaining a self-image of being somebody who has certain traits, needs to stay in place. After all, wasn't it Descartes that said, I think, therefore I am? And if we don't think, are we going to vanish? Are we going to disappear? It can be a frightening proposition. And we can also wonder if we let go of this self-image, how are we going to know how to behave? How are we going to know that we're not going to run naked down the street, screaming at the top of our lungs or something ridiculous? The thing is, when you reach that place of letting go within your own being, there is a deeper knowing, a deeply ethical knowing, understanding that naturally propels one in appropriate directions, and freely so, without the drag of the idea that, oh, am I doing this right? Am I going to be criticized? Am I going to be chastised? Am I going to do something wrong? There is a seamlessness about it, an ease about it, when we have reached deeply enough to be free, truly free. And that lives within us. And that is what Li Po was speaking to. When eventually all that remains is simply the mountain. All that remains is simply the breath. And then we have something from Layman Pang. When the mind is at peace, the world too is at peace. Nothing real, nothing absent. Not holding on to reality, but not getting stuck in the void. You're neither holy nor wise, just an ordinary fellow who's completed his work. And then this is from somehow I've missed a page somewhere. If you look for the truth outside of yourself, it gets farther and farther away. Today, walking alone, I meet him everywhere I step. He is the same as me, yet I am not him. Only if you understand it in this way will you merge with the way things are. And that is from Tung Shan Liang Zhi, a Chinese master whose dates are 807 to 869. And then from a Christian mystic, Simeon, the New Theologian. We awaken in Christ's body as Christ awakens in our bodies. And my poor hand is Christ's hand. He enters my foot and is infinitely me. I move my hand, and wonderfully, my hand becomes Christ, becomes all of it. For God is indivisible, whole, seamless in his Godhood. This is the Buddha nature as well. I mean, it's not as well, it is in different words. I move my foot, and at once he appears like a flash of lightning. Do my words seem blasphemous? Then open your heart to him and let yourself receive the one who is opening to you so deeply. For if we genuinely love him, we wake up inside Christ's body, where all our body, all over, every most hidden part of it is realized in joy as him. And he makes us utterly real. And everything that is hurt, everything that seemed to us dark, harsh, shameful, maimed, ugly, or irreparably damaged, is in him transformed and recognized as whole, as lovely, and radiantly in his light. We awake as the beloved in every last part of him today. And from Izumi Shikibu, a Japanese contemporary, well, no, not so contemporary, 974 to 1034. So he overlapped a bit with Dogen. Watching the moon at dawn, solitary, mid-sky, I knew myself completely, no part left out. Who are we? That people could write these words, no matter what their source religion. In all religions, this truth is spelled out in different ways, but reaching to the same source. And each of us in this day can also open to that same source, because it is nowhere else but right here now. And when we do, well, for centuries, people have been doing this. We know instinctively somehow that it is essential to open once more to whatever we want to call it, this true self. It takes work. That part is guaranteed. It takes work. It isn't instant, but every time you return your attention to the practice, feeling it, not thinking it, experiencing it, it is making inroads into where you're caught, and eventually do it enough and the caughtness breaks open and you get a glimpse of what can really be and what really is, really. And hopefully that inspires us to work more deeply, because as near as I can tell, there is no end to this opening. And once we get a taste of it, we don't want to stop. So we have more days in this sesshin, and of course, hopefully, many more days in our life, but we don't know that for sure, in which to do this amazing work. Challenging initially, but eventually one reaches a place where it is joyful to practice. So as we continue on with this sesshin, do your best. It will be so worth it. Keep trying. If you get discouraged, explore discouragement. If you get elated, explore elation. But beware. Don't get attached to any of it. This is the challenge. Thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.